Never thought I'd be here again. Sounds kind of weird to say that, but I just thought after what happened a couple of years ago, we wouldn't have to worry about the quality of drivers. And now we're stuck with this mug. Don't know who he is? Well, this dude, his name is Alessio Deledda. There are some out there who'll be thinking, hang on, didn't you already make a video on this guy? Well, yeah, I did. Pretty much this time last year, I covered this whole scenario of him posting videos of what looked like him speeding along the Autostrada in a Lamborghini. And that shit landed me in hot water over the fact that you really couldn't prove it was him driving the car. Now, I want to make it plain and clear that I do not believe it was Alessio at the wheel of that car. What's more, no, he didn't sue me, although neither he nor his lawyer were particularly happy about the video I made, so I made the wise choice, I guess you could say, to take down the video so that I didn't actually end up being sued, you know? Besides, I do not think it was him driving that thing, because the person driving that car looked to have a clue about what he was doing. It looked like the driver had some idea of the fundamentals of driving fast. It looked like the driver could, I don't know, qualify for some races which would automatically disqualify this guy. Because as we've seen from this guy's exploits on the racetrack, he is incapable of qualifying within a mile of the nearest driver in front of him. He can barely get through a race without being thrown a lap behind. He's that useless. Now, I've seen some drivers in my time, but this guy takes the cake like John Candy in a bakery fire. What fun it's been to see the sentient clump of hair product slowing around at the back of the track like a turd in a punch bowl. Just f***ing great. But was he really that bad? Or was I being too harsh on this guy? Should I perhaps revisit it all and consider a few more things? Because if there's more to this guy than meets the eye, then I've got to hear out his case. I mean, I don't purposely set out to look for crappy drivers. I take no pleasure in tearing them apart. But if they're going to appear out in the open like this, then hey, it's open season. I got to comment on it, no? Okay, maybe I don't. But everyone is talking about this dude, and not in a good way. So let's have a look at this whole thing. Let's have a look at the story of Alessio Deledda. Hailing from Italy, Deledda is a man of many talents. For example, he can make his cat take a shit by pointing a key fob at it and holding down the unlock button. And he also long held a desire to race since he was 8 years old, but his father forbade him as he was concerned regarding the dangers of the sport. Noble reasoning for sure, but come on man, let your kid live his dreams. Sure, he raced in your run-of-the-mill go-kart track like everyone else does, but apart from that, nothing. So instead he put his focus into his studies, attaining a double degree in economics and ADE. And perhaps, maybe, probably, this would explain how he amassed enough wealth to realize his dream. Kind of. Either way, you look at his Insta and he's straight up living the baller lifestyle. And hey, good for him. I'm not at all jealous. And eventually, at that age, he made the call that because he was old enough and he had the wherewithal to do it, he told his pops, listen buddy, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to go out and become a racing driver. Non mi interessa. Instead of trying his hand at racing cars, he started racing in the Italian Superstock 600 series, which is motorbicycling, which I know nothing about. But what we do know was that his results were rubbish. And it was perhaps after this that he decided to switch to four wheels instead, diving into the Italian F4 Championship for 2018. He was all by his onesies driving for Techno Race that year, but irrespective of that, his results painted a grim picture, a grand total of no points. Bruh. I mean, the reason I make this out to be some kind of big deal is because just a few years prior, this dude bagged 45 points. It seems kind of trivial, I know, but thinking about where these two have ended up, how low has the bar been set? And with Italian F4 having no shortage of mid-drivers meddling at the back, to be here in the standings is... yeah. In fairness, he did improve that season, although he improved by his standards. Take from that what you will. And besides, Lord Mojave over here was beating up Bobby Sportsy in some races, so... yeah, no, I really don't know what to make of this all. In any case though, he was now 24 years old, and you really can't mess around in F4 for too much longer at that age if you're serious about doing anything in racing. So, despite this amazing success, he made the jump over to Formula 3 for 2019. He kicked off the year in the Euro Formula Winter Series where he got the results that you might have imagined. But it was a winter series, so it's about as meaningless as a People's Choice Award, or half the Sky Sports F1 panel, or the Buffalo's defense in overtime. Otherwise, he raced in the Formula Renault Euro Cup, and he also did some stuff in the Central European Zone Championship. And don't give me that, oh, I don't care garbage, because he only did one weekend here, and he won it. But that's where the winning ends. One race. From here on in, yeah, let's move on. So one of the other series he did that year was the Formula Renault Euro Cup, which is hardly a Tiddlywinks championship. He was driving alongside Javier Oliveras at GVS, although it was only a part-time schedule, racing at Monza, Monaco, Paul Ricard, and Spa. In that time, it was clear just who was the better driver between the two. That opening round in Monza wasn't really helped when he spun under safety car conditions and took another driver with him. The mess. In terms of pace, it really didn't get too much better in Monaco, where he qualified 11.5 seconds off the pole. 11.5 seconds. 11 28.5. The pace was still garbage in the race, only person in the 34s, and was nearly lapped in the first one, and it was a 20-lap race. How do you nearly get lapped in a 20-lap junior race? Is he taking the piss? He did the next 2 rounds, but after that, he left the series. It was clear that he was way out of his depth here. But the reason why he left the series was because he switched focus entirely to another series he was racing that year. Although, given how much of a struggle Formula Renault was, it'd be pretty stupid if he was racing FIA F3, for example, right? No one would be that stupid, right?
Welcome to a new era for Formula 3.
In this series, he was driving over at Campos alongside Sebastian Fernandez and Alex Peroni. Now, both Sebastian and Weird Al Yankovic are both bloody good drivers, so Alessio did have some talent to go up against in that squad. He christened the start of the season by spinning into the sandbox in the first race, which is hardly ideal. Having said that, he pulled it together nicely for the second race, and actually, his pace wasn't too bad, so props to him on that one, I guess. But come the next round in France, he went right back to mid again, when he qualified over 2 seconds slower than the next car ahead of him. He was nearly 5 seconds off the pole time, and in the races, he fell so far behind that the officials died of boredom waiting for him to finish the race. No lie, he qualified slowest in Austria and was nowhere in the races. But I bet this dude was laughing his ass off when he saw both his teammates smash into each other in that second race. I guess he could take the dub over that one. Silverstone. He qualified slowest there too. And again, he was nowhere in the races. He was sort of leading a boring life in the series, and he was only halfway through the damn season. Qualifying was still an issue for him. But then, at Monza, something amazing happened.
I'm not lost! I'm not lost! I'm second to last!
Yeah, he kind of upped his game a little bit, out-qualifying a dude here and there. Race results was still nothing though. It wasn't really that good. When all was said and done, he finished the year in 29th, the lowest placed driver in the standings, and his stint in Macau wasn't brilliant either. Qualifying at the back and finishing worlds behind in the race. Really not that brilliant. But for some reason, he thought it'd be a good idea to compete in F3 for another season, and while he was at it, was going to compete in the Asian F3 series to sharpen his skills. He was gonna need it. Actually, while we're on the subject, how did he do in that series? Well, he was paired up with High Tech, which is honestly a good enough team, let's put it that way. And he was paired up with Ukyo Sasahara, who was a pretty good driver himself, and Nikita Mazepin. So anyway, Ukyo ended up winning a few races that year, although he didn't count for points in that series, while Mazepin nabbed up a few podiums himself to take third in the series. Deledda, however, didn't quite achieve those results. He was down in 15th overall, with the best result of 7th coming in Thailand. Now, I don't mean to be rude, but that's a little shit. It's like getting shut out by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Not a serious driver, I'm afraid. But if he wanted to shut everyone up, I guess he did just that in the first round of the championship when he out-qualified his teammate, Sophia Flörsch. But he threw it all away in the first race when he got a stop-go penalty for donkeying up the start procedure. This put him a lap down and last in the running order. Bummer. The next race though was way better. Starting from last on the grid, he jumped all the way up to P20, ahead of some established names. Yeah, a few things had to happen before he got there, but you gotta take what you can get in this game. He qualified last in the next round, and a gamble on tyres did not pay off in race 1. Race 2 though, again, was much better. And he honestly didn't look too bad in that race, not gonna lie. He was brought right back down to earth though with the next round when he qualified last, over 6 seconds slower than the pole time, and 2.6 seconds slower than the next slowest driver. God Lord have mercy on our soul. Race 1 was decent, but then in race 2 he went straight back to drowning. There was a pattern emerging here, and not a particularly brilliant one either. Silverstone was better in the sense that he qualified last, but not extremely last. It was, shall we say, acceptably last, if there ever is such a thing. He kind of hurt his weekend by damaging his front wing after hitting Jack Doohan, who wasn't very happy.
What a joke, honestly. It all starts from qualifying. We wouldn't be back with these numpties that don't know how to drive every 2 weekends in a row now.
When Jack Doohan gets angry at you, you know you done f***ed up. New round, same circuit, and same result in qualifying, last, and retired from the second race after trying to get a little bit too close to some of those around him. The next round was in Barcelona. You win no prizes for guessing where he qualified. Race 1 looked a little bit promising, but as was the way with him, race 2 had to throw up something. Yeah, it threw up a rock which punctured the radiator and threw him out of the race. Unlucky, mate. It should be worth mentioning that in practice, he spun off in the same place he did the previous year, which was kind of impressive when you think about it. Actually, I've thought about it and it's kind of sad. And just to show him who was boss, he did it again in qualifying for good measure. He didn't qualify last in Spa, but he did spin off into the gravel in race 1, which... yeah, I got nothing there. Qualified toward the back in Monza, but delivered a not terribly crap weekend overall. When all was said and done, it was back to business in the last round of Mugello, however, when he qualified last. He was also the last of the runners in both races to cap off the season, finishing 34th that year, which was somehow worse than what he managed the year before. And then you've got to consider the performance comparison to his teammates. It was night and day. Sure, Sofia struggled, but Pironi was out there challenging for podiums on the weekly. That said, it is a high level of competition. We are talking about the best up-and-coming drivers in the category. Now that we've had these 2 years of masterclassery, moving up to a higher category would not be a wise move, to put it diplomatically. And then that whole video fiasco happened and put him under a microscope a lot more, and once again, I do not think it was him driving the car. Non guida, capiche? But yeah, moving up to Formula 2 would be the stupidest thing in the world, as well as being the most predictable thing in he was signed by HWA in January 2021. Now, a lot of people thought this was a complete joke, but I was hardly shocked. Not least because Deledda had money, but those teams do need it. And not every driver in the world can fork out $2 to $3 million a year to drive an unreliable car made by people too spineless to mend their problems with it. But that's a whole nother story. He also took part in the Asian F3 Winter Series again, which went well. But Formula 2 was the focus that year, and I really was not prepared for what was to come, given we were all barely over the shock of this guy's gymnastics a couple years prior. F2 is a category which is tricky enough for the best of rookie drivers, so bring in a 26-year-old Italian playboy with a reputation for driving slower than John Daly on low blood sugar levels, and in with a team that really needed an experienced driver, this whole campaign could end up sinking faster than the Lusitania. His teammate that year was Matteo Nannini, a good driver for sure, but he wasn't a Teo Porcher, or a Liam Lawson, or a Bobby Schwartzy, or an Oscar Pastry. But not everyone is, and he was a decent benchmark for Deledda, at least. So to qualify 2 seconds off of him was, I mean, make your own minds up over that one, I guess. He claimed a lot of these large deficits in qualifying were down to red flags, but say it with me, people. That's racing. He finished last of the runners in the first race, and he didn't finish the second one, but he would come back fighting in the feature race to retire on the first lap. So with all that having been done, the F2 circus headed to Monaco and oh boy. Now, remember how he qualified 11.5 seconds slower than the pole time in Formula Renault? Well, doing that here again would pretty much make him not qualify. So it was in his best interest that he not try to do that again. Well, he goofed up. He didn't qualify. But the officials allowed him to race anyway because, I mean, hey, why not? Well, there were a hell of a lot of reasons why not to, but there was no time for rational solutions here. Race 1, he was lapped, with lap times that were at best around 4 seconds slower. Race 2, he was lapped again and was even more off the pace than he was before, although he did finish 12th in that race thanks to everyone dying, so I guess that's a bonus. Feature race comes around and again he was lapped, finishing ahead only of teammate Jack Aitken, who was experiencing enough troubles in that race to conclude that, screw it, European Junior Series are not worth it anymore. Although in absolute fairness to Alessio, he did improve. He was only a couple seconds off everyone else instead of being a few seconds off the pace. He did make improvements that weekend, so hey, credit where credit's due and all that other good jazz. Baku. I don't exactly have to rope in Matlock to guess where he qualified again. He was dumped out of the first race thanks to some interesting driving, I think we could say, that took out multiple drivers. He finished well down in race 2 and a lap behind in the feature race where he almost ran into leader Yuri Vips when he came up to lap him. Again, we have to ask ourselves at this point, what is the point of all of this? And again, he qualified last in Silverstone, nearly 4 seconds off the pace. His acrobatics in race 1 resulted in retirement, and in race 2 he had a little bit of a tango with Ralph Boschung. Alright, it was a decent smack. Feature race wasn't much cop either. He was a lap down again. Monza! Last in qualifying again. He finished 13th in race 1 though, which was great if you ignore all the retirements, but as they say, you can't win a race unless you finish it. Yeah. Race 2 was a bore fest for him, but a chain of events in the feature race saw him run as high as 4th once the safety car period had ended. Holy crap, could this be a change of form for him? Could he hold on to take his first podium in Formula 2? His first podium in this level of competition? His first podium and okay, I'll stop. He drowned. And I mean, it was always going to end that way given the strategy, but compared to others that were in the same deal, it was a massacre. Sochi qualifying, blah, 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 finished last, yada, yada, yada. The round in Russia did nothing for him, so he'd have to look to Saudi Arabia for some reprieve. That is the first time in human history that anyone has ever said that. Hitting the wall in practice, though, meant that qualifying would not happen for him. The officials, though, were more than happy to allow him to race, and so the show went on. In race 1, there were technical gremlins, which killed his run, and Sam Mai's territorial dispute stumped him out of the second race as well, with the last race being annulled due to a horrifying crash. Deledda was left with only one round to showcase his skill at Abu Dhabi. Question was, could he lift himself off the back row of the grid and break the streak? No. He did a bit better in the races though, finishing not last in the first one, although this all came to a shuddering halt in the next race when he and Ollie Caldwell argued over the same piece of racetrack and ended up climbing over each other, which must have dented his confidence somewhat, because in the final race of the championship, he finished a long way down on everyone else. He finished 2021 P25 in the standings, the last of the full-time drivers, and now that we've run through his career, was he really that bad? Well, yeah, he wasn't brilliant, and by F2 standards, he was But I will say this dude's car racing career properly started at 23 years old. There are drivers out there who have retired before they reach 23. When you lose that much time behind the wheel of a car, you're not just trying to make up for lost ground, you're straight up almost certainly never going to catch up. And the thing is this, in an interview, he spoke candidly about what he wanted to do in racing, about how he understands where he sits on the food chain, that he understood that Formula One was not likely for him. And that's more than can be said about the other dude who is still hell-bent on making it into the top flight of motorsport, despite the fact the dude can't drive. And the difference is he started karting at a young age. He had the experience that Alessio didn't, and yet despite still being by comparison, he did improve over the weekends, and there were more than enough times he was hanging onto the coattails of drivers who were decent enough as they were. I suppose, ultimately, here's how I summarize all of this. That tirade at the start of the video is reflective of how some people legitimately viewed the guy, simply because he was slow enough to gather algae, was at the back of the field constantly, was always getting lapped, and that he was taking away seats that should have gone to more deserving people. Now, does he belong on the F1 feeder series circuit or even in Formula One itself? Hell no. God no. Yeesh, no. But if you had the wherewithal to do what he's doing, and you've long wanted to be a racing driver yourself, would you not do it? After being told at a young age that the sport is too dangerous and that he wouldn't be allowed to do it. I know you're probably wondering why I've gone soft on this guy, but trust me, I have not. He should not be anywhere near F3 or F2, but he's not the only one. It's just that I can't really give this guy too much given what he's had to overcome, what he's had to learn, and given that, from what I've been told from fellow drivers and people who have worked with him, he's apparently a decent dude. Sometimes we kind of forget the human factor in all of this. Even I do sometimes. But light does need to be shone on that, even if his driving ain't that great. Although, his driving ain't great by Formula 2 standards, and that's a high bar no matter how many mid-drivers you may think are in it. Another thing to mention is that money is what makes the sport work. The rich kids and playboys are what keeps the sport alive, whether we like to admit that or not. And ultimately, how can we be so cruel to a dude when all that he's doing is realizing his dream? For as far back as he could remember, all he's ever wanted was to be a racing driver. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you're awesome, and always remember, keep it respectful, be wholesome, don't be a menace, and as always, I'll see you all later.